Thank you very much, Paul. And I just thought I'd quit to start with. My present I'll put on there. It's a delight to be here tonight, unaccustomed as I am to speaking in sort of esteemed audiences like this. But it's all packed out, isn't it? So there'll be nothing but facts delivered tonight. If any of them are wrong, do let me know. But I'm hoping that you'll be able to go away from this talk enlightened. And this talk title, of course, which Bob helped me create by email, he created the second part of it, I created the first part. It promises more than it delivers.
Paul, can we claim CPT points?
Well, it depends on what you knew already. If this extends your learning, then of course you can claim them. If it's all old hat, then I'm afraid not. So there's a few pictures on here. There's one of me. I'm a psychiatrist. And there's
Paul, do you only treat men?
Well, the male refers to me rather than the people I see. I tend to see more women than men, actually, not through choice, but in fact...
Is that part of your official title?
It's in the job plan. And as you can see, I've put a lot of pictures on this. It's probably so many pictures it won't work, but you've got, there's an esteemed building there at the bottom there, available for hire for functions. Local consultants put in a bid recently for use as a mental health unit, controversially. That bid will be accepted or not, but we're hoping, it still could be used for that purpose.
Ceiling contractors need not apply?
Yeah, well, obviously, yes, it might be. So they define an expert, don't they, as a person who's more than 20 miles from home, who's skilled in the use of PowerPoint and has no responsibility for implementing the advice he offers. So I reckon I qualify on at least, well, none of those criteria, actually. Certainly the PowerPoint is going to be challenging, because you can see the talk and I can't see the talk, so that's great, but I'm really grateful to be here tonight. So let's start, shall we? There are lots of pictures on here, because of course pictures help you digest things a bit more than words, but there's plenty of words as well, because I'm very obsessional about things as well. So let's look inside the minds of both men and women and see what we find there, shall we? So you might say, well, why am I qualified to deliver this talk? And what gives me the right to come here and tell you about males and females, which encompasses quite a large proportion of the population? Well, I've got a long-standing interest in sex. And in fact, my family for generations back have had that interest. I've been asked to write a chapter in a book called The Female Mind, which is from the Royal College of Psychiatrists, coming out next year. By Sue Bailey asked me to write it, so I thought I'd gained some experience by researching the female mind, and now I'm enlightened. I'm interested in research. I'm in one of the current top 10 psychiatrists to build our hospital. That's inside the building, of course. And I'm keen on evidence, and tonight will be purely evidence-based. And I'm an ex-NICE fellow, so I was once working with NICE, not for NICE, and I used to be quite nice. And you'll find that I'll present a totally balanced view tonight, because of course I've got, luckily, both an X and a Y chromosome, and a parent of each gender. So I hope there's a bit of genetics in it tonight. Not too detailed, because I know what genetics is like. I find it a bit challenging. And I'm male, but I live with 4 females. And that is a lot of chromosomes, isn't it, really? So I hope you appreciate the graphics as we go along tonight. And I'll be countering some stereotypes. So first of all, I want you to check out. See if you recognise yourself on here. I'm not going to say for it, I'm just letting you digest the slide, really. I'll sit down for a little while. I particularly like the commitment neuron in the male brain. And the female brain, of course, has got quite a lot of interesting mystery moods and behaviours right at the centre of things, of course. Musicals and sitcoms, gossip, yeah. Anyway, and the male brain, well, it's got a lot of power tools in it, hasn't it? And possibly sex. I don't know. Getting lost and not admitting it. Yes. We don't like to admit that, do we really? So that's the brain as I know it, but it's a long time since I did neurology. I'll stand to be corrected if any of those areas of the brain are not quite as the same. And I'll be looking at things from different perspectives today. So this is probably the only slide that isn't new, in fact. This is a new talk for me. So let me know how it goes, won't you? Give me honest feedback, by which I mean praise. And I want you to look at that and say, what do you see as you look at that picture now? Tell me what you see. Anybody see a woman, for example? Anybody see a woman? Yes? Great. Anybody see a man? Yes, Alex Salmon's in there, isn't he? Really? Just about. Anybody see anything else?
An old woman.
Yeah, an old woman, and a young woman, and a man. Now, I'm not going to point these out to you now, because some of you will say, I haven't quite got all three. But you'll find that, so there's the man, eyes, nose, moustache, he's facing this way. The woman is that way, but both women are that way. The older woman's looking down, and that's her eyes, nose, and mouth. And the younger woman's looking upwards, and that's her eye, nose, and that's her chin there, more delicate image. So this is something I use in my talks on CBT, which is a talk and treat that works for everyone, but is universally not available for anybody in the NHS. So it's a fantastic treatment. Can never be proved wrong because nobody ever gets it. So so it's the way you look at the world which is important. And I want you to look at women and men in a different way tonight, after you've had this talk. Let's look at evidence-based medicine, because I don't want to make this too dry here, but you have to look at the criteria, the hierarchy of evidence, according to the Cochrane collaboration and NICE guidelines. So let's go through the levels of evidence. It's boring, but you have to do it, otherwise you won't understand what's coming afterwards. So, class 1, the things I believe despite the evidence. That's a very strong level of evidence. Then this is, I should have said, we're starting with the strongest evidence and working our way downwards. So that's the first level of evidence. And the second level is randomised controlled trials that agree with what I happen to believe. That's quite strong as well. So you do pay attention to evidence. Third class, other prospectively collected data, not randomised trials. Expert opinion, that's in there.
That's mine.
Is that your
Mine.
Mine. It's perhaps your own opinion. And then what you believe that I don't. And finally, no, that's it really, actually. And then there's a reference there if you want to look any of that up in the future, okay? It's meant to say nice.com, C-O-N, but that was the joke. But it obviously doesn't work out really, so that's guidelines for you. So I'll be dealing with evidence at class 1 tonight, okay? So pure evidence-based. Alternatively, I'll just be Googling a few things that look quite interesting and presenting them to you. So I quite like the picture takes. It promises quite a lot, doesn't it? Well, but Google often does. So I've been on Google, but I've selected only the stuff that appeared to me to be believable. So let's go back to the beginning now. I told you there'd be some genetics involved in this. I don't know if you remember this from when you used to be taught, but it is in fact true that it is the man who's in charge of the word go. So the man decides the gender. He deliberately produces 2 types of sperm, X and Y sperm. And according to what I've read, apparently this Y chromosome tells your primordial gonads what to do. It tells them to produce testosterone, and of course if you don't produce the testosterone, the ovaries develop instead by default. So females are a default position generally. This isn't going to go down well, is it? But don't worry, you're going to get your own back later on. So by week 7 it's obvious who's becoming a boy and who's not, and week 10 the girls. And by week 20 on scans you can certainly begin to see some differentiation. Well, I think I got it wrong in the case of one of our children's scans. Now, there's a sexually dimorphic nucleus in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. I don't understand any of those words, but it is true. There's a part of the brain which is responsible for sexual behaviour and differentiation. And it's quite big in men due to androgens, but it's quite small in women. And this controls your gender and type of sexual behaviour as you get older, from the word go. And we know from research that giving some girls high levels of sex hormones can actually change their behaviour to be more butch. So that seems scientific to me, really. So the summary of this slide is really, apart from the fact that the Y chromosome isn't very big, is that the sexes are unequal from the start, not just physically, but in their minds as well. So we are different sorts of people. Feel free to challenge me at any point. So we develop attitudes, and girls like pink and they love dancing, I randomly threw a dice and had 3 girls in a row. I mean, what's the chances of that, eh? But, 1 in 8, thank you. Yes, actually, it was an answerable question, wasn't it, that one? Thank you. Yes, those mathematicians in the room, well, yes, it's great. So that's one of my children, and it's a bit older than that now, but still acts that way. So thank you. That's how girls behave. So, boy or girl, interesting, it's not just 50-50. Slightly more boys than girls are born. So that's because we don't live as long, of course. You've got to keep things balanced in the world. Spike Milligan did have this quote, that contraception should be used on every conceivable occasion, and I quite like the quote, so that's why I put it in there. No other reason, really. So how to have a girl? Now this is scientific research from a book I had at home, which is over 20 years old, so this is definitely going to be true. To have a girl, have sex in the mid-cycle, have sex less often, be older or married for longer, or live in the Caribbean. And I think I didn't quite understand the reason for it. Apparently male sperm live longer, so you want to have a girl, you have to have, it's going to be mid-cycle, because the male sperm otherwise crowd things out at either end of the cycle. Don't worry, it's probably not true anyway, but there you go. How to have a boy? Well, start having sex during a major war. That seems to increase the incidence of boys born. Be more promiscuous or Asian. Okay, so if you're interested in having a boy, you can't control all those factors there, can you really? And in Korea, apparently 57% of babies are boys. And the reason why that's seen to be true is that if you're less selective when you have sex throughout the cycle, therefore proportionally more boys are born. Okay, so if you're not fussy about who and when you have sex, then you're going to do right with boys. Okay, forgive me if you already know all this already. It's probably a bit late to change at this stage. So this is a brain teaser. It says that, I'll read it out to you, okay? So, a father and his son were involved in a car accident. The father was killed and his son was seriously injured. The father was pronounced dead at the scene of the accident, and his body was taken to the local mortuary. The son was taken by ambulance to a hospital and wheeled into an operating room. An orthopaedic surgeon was called. Upon seeing the patient, the surgeon exclaimed, "Oh my God, it's my son. How is this possible?"
She was the president of the Royal College of Surgeons.
This is directed at who's not a doctor in the room? Those 2 people there. Well, lots of people actually, yeah. It's simply not possible, is it? Really? No, it's not a trick. This probably isn't a trick question to any of you, really, because it is possible for women to enter medicine. I wonder if any of you have ever considered that possibility. So that would only be if you were quite sexist or had a closed mind, perhaps, to women being orthopaedic surgeons. Then that would, if it was this child's mother, of course, it would be possible. I don't know what point I'm trying to make here. Probably not at all. But it's good to be controversial, isn't it? So let's look at the gender. I mean, who's better at which gender are better at which sort of profession? It's a bit fuzzy, this slide, but you can see, I think, we've got surgeons on there, really, and this is what people think, by the way, in the population, and apparently quite a lot of people think that men are better at being surgeons than women, but there are some female jobs that stand out. Women are very good at being nannies and florists. Excellent. Some do make it in the medical profession, actually. It's amazing. And plumbers are mostly men, aren't they, really? Yes. So that's people's perceptions of jobs, of course, not what actually could happen. There's no reason why you couldn't do either job. You could all be plumbers, for example, and earn a lot more money. So here's a stereotype. We're talking about stereotypes at the moment. Here's a general stereotype for those people starting out in medicine. If there are any medical students here, I think this is how I'd sort of give them some career guidance. So if you're a medical student, then if you're crazy with an attention span which is significant, do psychiatry. If you haven't got any attention span, do emergency medicine. That's one side. And on this side, if you're sane, if you're very hard working, then let's look at the attitude bit first. So if you're quite nice, then this splits into people who hate adults, which are paediatricians, people who hate children, which are general physicians. And then if you go to, I don't care about people really, if the patient's asleep, it's anaesthetics, if they're dead, it's pathology. And finally, if you're pretty mean at surgery, I'm sorry, it's a stereotype, I've met some very nice surgeons in my time. And then if you're not very hard working, then here's the career, the opt-out careers here. If you're afraid of the light, it's radiology. If you're afraid of the dark, think big, it's dermatology. And if you think small, it's ophthalmology. That's a really simple guide. I can't think why people can't just be presented with this sort of information when they get to medical school. And it'll just help them. I mean, I always talk about, F2 experience to broaden their horizon. You just need to read this table and they'll know which box they fit into from the word go. Psychiatry. Well, psychiatry, apparently, we're crazy, but we're significantly able to concentrate on our own craziness for a long time, which is good. I know I think there's a lot of normal people in psychiatry, isn't there, really? Now this next part isn't going to work very well because you have to have a pen and paper, really. So let's just do it kind of interest, really. So this is meant to be testing your personality. I'll tell you the point of the test in a minute, but we have purple and orange colours there. And you score 1 point if it's more true of you, and 0 points if it's not especially true of you, 50-50 onwards. So it's hard to do this in a group, really, but if you, what I'll do is, I'll tell you what we'll do. If you look at all the purple statements there, if you quickly go through them and in your mind think, is that more true of me as a person generally? Add up how many times you score a point out of 10. So I'll let you do the purple statements first, okay? I'll leave you to that. So purple, number out of 10. Is that it? Okay, so have you done that? Have you got a score in your head out of 10?
Yeah.
Okay, so keep that score in mind. Now look at the orange statements and say, how many of those are especially true of me? Okay. Okay, have we done that, maybe? Okay, so now you've got to compare those two scores, okay? So the pink ones, or rather the purple ones, are masculine personality, okay? So that's your masculinity score, and the orange ones are your femininity score, okay? So you may discover you could be a male with a masculine mind or a male with a feminine mind. So how many men had masculine scores overall, more than 5 out of 10? Yeah, quite a few men actually, yes. Any men had more of a feminine score actually? Wow, interesting there. GPs. Now the women, who are the feminine women in the room here? Female scores, we get quite a good group here. Excellent, quite a lot. Any masculine women on the, hardcore there, isn't there? Yeah, that's interesting. So that just goes to prove absolutely nothing at all. That goes to prove that you can have, these are supposed to be go-getting masculine or feminine traits. We ask people, so like, I like to win, obviously that's a male trait, whereas being affectionate is female. These are gross generalisations. But you'll discover then you've now got your score for masculinity and femininity to take home with you today and use in your daily lives and adopt your sort of stereotyped image of yourself accordingly. I hope you enjoyed that exercise. There's no charge for that today, by the way. It's out of hours and out of hours care. Well, actually, we're still in hours under the new contract. So traditional gender stereotypes go along those lines, don't they really? The question you've probably got tonight is not what are the gender stereotypes, but how true are those stereotypes when you look at the hardcore scientific knowledge that I've gleaned from a casual look at Google. So that's what you really want to know. So those are the two different sorts of groups there. I can relate to a lot of that. on both sides of the equation, but then psychiatrists agree with everybody, don't they? So, let's look at some stereotypes, okay, first of all. Now, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm a very late riser in the morning, I have to admit there. My eldest child came into the room, woke me from sleep, handed a jar of jam to me, and I got it off straight away. So that goes to prove that men are used to
Yeah,
facilities.
but that's because your hand's bigger. It's too big for our hands.
Yeah, that's right. so Susan
Nothing
says,
to do with strength.
size counts. Thank you, we'll be discussing this, of course, later on. So, I'm going to put some hard science in here, because I think you deserve it tonight. So, male and female brains are different. Men have better visual spatial ability. They are better able to sort of imagine objects rotating in 3D, whereas women are much better at being fluent verbally, verbal tasks. They've done experiments to prove this. So, Phil will correct me if I'm wrong with this, but language in men depends more exclusively on the right side of the brain, whereas we have less bilateralisation amongst women. That sounds really plausible to me, I almost understood it, so I'm going to say that's true. But there's no evidence that I can find that women are less rational than men. I looked quite hard for that. But an important point to bear in mind, any statement I make tonight is a generalisation, of course. It's an average reading across many thousands of people who've been studied, but there's often more variation between the sexes than there is within a single sex than there is across the sexes. So, as I say, that's why it's only statistically true. It might not be true in your personal experience within your own relationship. Feel free to ask questions if you want. Now, we talked about male and female minds and bodies. So now I've got this 2x2 matrix here. I'm going to put in a picture of somebody who matches that description. A famous person, not yourselves, of course. So I'll have suggestions from the audience and see if you can guess which pictures I've put in. So first of all, we're going to have a male brain and a male body. Can anybody think of who has got a male brain and a male body? He was quite... James Bond? James Bond? Putin. Oh, he's quite... he's sort of topless boxing, yeah. Putin. Yeah, could be. Muhammad Ali. Oh, Arnie Schwarzenegger, yes, of course. Yes, he's had a quite nice day. So the first is, correct on the first one, we have, there's James Bond there. Fantastic, isn't it, really? They said, would you stand in, but I said... Do you think he's breathing in? He's got to be breathing in, hasn't he? Okay, next one is the female brain in the male body. Can we be careful?
Russian female athlete.
Anybody from yeah. Can we think of anybody who might be a female brain in a male body?
Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel. That's interesting. I think.
Oh, sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong.
She's still male, according to she's born a female, but anyway. I'll tell you what I've come up with here. Alan Carr, Chatty Man. Now my essay shows saw Alan Carr in York last week in a shop. This is a true story. Apparently he wasn't at all camp. He was very much sort of baseball cap and looked quite... So I think he camps it up a bit for the TV programme. But he's my sort of image of someone who's got this chatty sort of feminine way of dealing with things. I've no knowledge of it whatsoever, so it's just a stereotyped image. Graham Norton maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so female body and a male brain. Russian athletes.
Angela Merkel.
So if we're going to guess in these, now it took me a long time to think of these people. So Margaret Thatcher maybe. And finally, and I've got to be really careful what picture I put up here. A female brain in a female body. So who could we put there?
Kate Middleton.
Kate Middleton. Oh, God. It's just not fair when you get more. I can't believe you got all. Apart from that, kind of got right. So Kate Middleton, looking impressively slim in that picture there. I don't think I stretched it too much, really. She's actually, which is obviously very looking after her figure. Anyway, so the idea is being that we do have both male and female bodies, both in mind and body. It was a bit of fun, really, wasn't it? Really. Daniel Craig didn't really take his top off in this latest Bond film, did he? No. Not that I was bothered. So, and some people, of course, are born into the wrong body, and they have gender reassignment, and psychiatrists do, or used to certainly see people who want gender reassignment surgeries with transsexualism. This is Jan, who was formerly called Ian, who used to be a squaddy in the forces, and finally I'm a woman because he's screwed up pretty well, actually, I think, really. So that's a man who's now had the reassignment surgery and living as a woman. So we do get people who are of the wrong sex for their body that they're born into. There's lots of theories about why that is the case. To hormone exposure when you're in the womb.
He could have got the top of it, I think, in those hands.
I think that's... Yeah, there's no trouble there, is there really? She could look after herself. So creativity now, which I'm defining as finding new solutions to old problems. Let's look at the difference across the sexes there. And people do think of creativity as being an artistic thing, but there's no reason why that's true, is there? Because plenty of scientists have to be creative to think of things in new ways. Think of Einstein, Darwin, anybody who's really made a big discovery. They've looked at things from a different angle. But we tend to think of the likes of Oscar Wilde and Chopin. When you look at creativity between the genders, there's no overall difference between them in terms of how creative they are.
Name the female composers.
Well, do you know, I once said that at a lecture from a reproductive psychiatrist, and she got really annoyed at me but yeah, that's true. But maybe there's more tendency for them to be recognised for those things. It's fascinating, isn't it? That's true, actually. There are less female composers. But since I've started looking for female composers, I find a lot more. I can mention. Let's look at this evidence. But when you look at children, actually, you do find an interesting statistic. If you look at, in one study, if you have feminine boys or masculine girls as defined by their behaviour, they're more creative. So, which is interesting. And the conclusion of that study was that if children are less stereotyped sexually in terms of their behaviour and how they look and develop, they're more likely to be more creative. That kind of gives a little bit of credence to this idea that if you're a man who's a bit more artistic or a bit more, I don't know, camp, you're more likely to be more creative. If you're a woman who's less feminine, you may be able to be more creative in a different way. I don't know. It's getting serious now. Behaviour and emotions. So, we know that baby girls smile more, attentive to eyes, they're sociable. Now the next one, boys, I put and men as well, because I couldn't find a difference between boys and men in terms of their behaviour. So we have rougher play, more aggressive, they have a lot of male toys, and they're competitive and stoic. Is that true? I don't know. Yeah. Thank you, ladies.
Don't make me cry.
Women are expressive, they're perceptive, and they're help-seeking. But you might think, well, men don't feel as much as women, they're harder, but it's not true. We men feel everything just as much as you do, we just conceal it more. We just hide in it, okay? That's true. So underneath this hard exterior is a caring person. Crying. Regularly, actually. So let's talk about barbecue. He's got an incredibly neat patio, hasn't he, really? I'm reading this out now. This isn't a fact, this is a joke, okay, this bit. So, okay, so now, when it's summer evenings, of course, the man likes to take control, doesn't he? And usually it involves a barbecue. It's usually a barbecue because it involves sort of an element of danger. And there's fire involved, and there's tools, and there's meat. So it's a very masculine thing. You would never ask a woman to do it, would you? Let's go anyway. So here's the stages. The stages for the average summer barbecue in the United Kingdom, okay? Different stages. Stage 1, the woman buys the food, okay? Stage 2, the woman makes a salad, prepares the vegetables, and makes the dessert. And stage 3, the woman prepares the meat for cooking, places it on a tray along with the necessary cooking utensils and sauces, and then she takes it to the man who's lounging beside the grill. Now, okay, here's the really important bit, stage 4. The man places the meat on the grill. Okay? Right, some more routine stuff now. Stage 5, the woman goes inside to organise the plates and the cutlery. Stage 6, the woman comes outside to tell the man the meat's burning. He thanks her and he asks her if she'll bring him another beer while he deals with the situation. Stage 7, another important bit, the man takes the meat off the grill and hands it to the woman. It's a busy evening. 8. The woman prepares the plates, salad, bread, utensils, napkins, sauces and brings them to the table. And stage 9, after eating, the woman clears the table and does the dishes. Stage 10, most importantly, everyone praises the man and thanks him for his cooking efforts, okay? And there's a final stage. The man asks the woman how she enjoyed her night off. And when he sees her annoyed reaction, concludes there's just no pleasing. So that's what usually happens. It's true in your household anyway, really. But let's move on now. That was a bit of light relief between all these serious bits that I'm putting in this talk today. So let's look at books, shall we, really? There's my own book, by the way. So, men, I should ask you this question. What are the most popular books? There's two there, as you've seen it. So, the most popular books that men read, first of all, general non-fiction. I don't know what that is. Is that pornography? No. So, general non-fiction books. What else do men like reading? Go on.
Biographies.
Biographies, maybe. Yeah, what else? Crime, yeah. Crime's a big seller, isn't it? Let's see what's on the list. It's a bit like a quiz programme, isn't it? About 4:30 on the TV. So, coming at number 2, crime. Number 3, war and adventure. For adventure, that's pornography, probably. 4, science fiction. Yes, men I like science fiction. I find it interesting, but Susan doesn't. I know that. Not as much. So let's look for what women go for. Okay. So, what are the top books for women? What sort of things?
Romance.
Yeah. See, yeah, it's a stereotype, isn't it? Really, but in fact.
Sadomasochism.
Yeah, that's comes in a romance for women. Yeah, thank you. Any other books that women like reading? Crime, they probably do actually, yes. I can't remember what's on this slide, so just have a look.
Cookery.
Oh, yeah, right down there. So, serious novels. What's a serious novel? That must be Jane Austen. Yeah, something. You get them reduced in the £1 bookshop, don't you? 10. And you think, I must read that someday. And I do intend to. So serious novels, number 2. Number 3, historical works, interesting. And number 4, biographies. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just going to add another one at the bottom there, because you mentioned cooking. So what we have here is cookery books and diet books. So that's how not to eat what you've just learned to cook. So there's both those things in there at the same time. It's very popular. Next, body language. It's getting interesting now. Did you know women are better at sending out verbal messages and at eye contact than men are? They're good with body language, women. I can tell what's going on just by looking at them. But women are more accurate also at reading the body images than men are, the non-verbal images. And they're also more sensitive to lots of things, including their children's needs. I'm very glad they're sensitive, because I'm vaguely aware there's some small people floating about the house, and I'm not quite sure what's happening there. And interestingly, you might have heard this one before, when you give 2 identical pictures of the same woman to some people, it's only the men that are more attracted to the woman with the bigger pupils. But interestingly, they can't explain why they're more attracted. They don't even notice she's got bigger pupils. Yeah, I don't think it works for women as much. Women are not as interested in men's pupils as men are in women's pupils. And that's interesting in itself. Okay, moving on now. So, who has the upper hand in relationships? Do the stereotypes reflect reality? Who's got the most persuasive ability? So, as we found in discussions certainly at work, that women appear more amenable to persuasion than men. They're more flexible thinkers, less dogmatic. It's true, yes. I'm glad it's true when we have our next job planning meeting. But women are also more likely to agree with you if they think you're going to know what their opinion is, which tells me something about the fact that they might be agreeing with you, but cleverly not really believing that inside. So there might be a sort of higher level of emotional intelligence in women. On the other hand, when you go into couples, you find that men tend to try and get their way by using logical argument, whereas women use more indirect approaches. You may have noticed this yourself, men. Becoming withdrawn or silent for inexplicable reasons. That's used quite a lot. But interestingly, and I was quite interested with this, that it's both sexes equally use manipulative or pleading tactics. So both sexes are manipulative of each other. Is any of that new news to you anyway? It's just like revising, isn't it, really? It's not really, that's controversial. So let's look at the rules now, okay? This is more serious stuff. So, who makes the rules in your house? Let's go through them. Number one, the female makes the rules, and these are always subject to change without prior notice. No man can possibly know all the rules, but if the female suspects that the male knows all